how they see the role of civil society in a
No dobrze,
successful
sorry,
digital
because I'm
transformation.
contemplating. I will try to speak English. That might be, in a sense, faster. Thank you so much for invitation. Uh, and okay, it's a kind of echo, but let me try. First time I was asked to, to provide this kind of a beginning with, I was kind of a hesitating because but the people who invite me, they know me, and I know that I'm kind of a provocateur, and that's will be the case again. I think I probably on the other side of camera, it's a lot of people who are enthusiastic about technology. So basically I'm trying to be a bit bitter, not to discourage you, but basically to advocate for the very important role of a civil society organization, which might support kind of a proper use of technology, to put it that way. My opinion on technology is general, obviously, and having so little time, it's very hard to basically go into details. I think the good word is ambivalence. So obviously I think it's always a kind of a, um, mm, two sides of that. And obviously we can say the internet is just another tool. We know it from history. I think it's much more than a tool. I think it's going back to this kind of a famous quotation, messenger is a message. I think internet is much more than a tool, and especially in the life of civil society and civil society organization, it represents a lot of the power, if you say, possibilities, but also a lot of threat. Since I'm not very much at my age being up to the, the latest innovation in technology, that was, many years ago. I'm using a kind of old-fashioned, in a sense, vocabulary and old-fashioned categories to describe the challenge we are facing. Going almost, I know the Greeks are not very often, perceived, but I think I found very interesting that in Greek philosophy there was like a three elements of being, if you like, capable. One was episteme, which is basically epistemology. It means that we know something. The second one is techne. It's somehow a kind of a competence to do things, that we know how to do things. And the third one in this triangle, very often forgotten, it's pronensis, which means basically, and that's again the beginning of problem, you can say it's a wisdom. It's rather the question, not how, but why, if you like. It's this kind of a mature access to the tools. So the answer for the question, why you doing it, cannot be satisfied by saying, I'm doing it because I can do that thing. So my understanding is that the technology is growing really, really exponentially fast. So we have a really big muscles in terms of what we can do. And I have a quite a kind of hesitation trying to see whether we have enough courage, enough wisdom in a sense to use technology. In my opinion, we obviously we cannot control this kind of a process, especially since it's completely, and the time it's running. Its history is not ended. It's not ended. Maybe it's the end of time. So we live in a kind of a almost apocalyptic time, where we think that we're running faster and faster. Obviously, it will be nice to stop and think, including the question of technology, because many of you and that's one of the role of the civil society organization, which traditionally are about protecting values, for example, fundamental values. And we already know that it's very hard to translate in a digital era many traditional values like property, freedom, um, tradition, even democracy. I think all those things are somehow, we know those kind of the application from the old era, while we live in a completely new environment. And I think the our kind of a mental capacity and moral capacity, intellectual capacity, is basically lagging behind, if you like, those kind of a technical skills we already possess. Obviously, if I'm talking about something being ambivalent, on the one hand, it means that there's something good. I mean, even the fact that we speak right now is a benefit of using technology. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it won't be even possible. So obviously we can name a long list of things which are possible thanks to the technology. But obviously there's the other part of that, because as the again philosophical approach is that things you own they also own you. So if you can imagine what might happen if you don't have technology, you don't know even the number to your parents, you cannot cash your your money, you cannot buy a gasoline, you can imagine only the disaster which might happen if technology is somehow failing. So on the one hand, it gives us a lot of power. On the other hand, obviously, it makes us extremely vulnerable for the any kind of kind of a interruption, if you like. Um, I think on the side of the civil society, internet was almost like a good. Um, it was perceived as a something which brings us power. You can even the Krzysztof Zdebski might talk about it, but a państwo, for example, is state. And I remember 10 years ago they have this kind of a claim. What was hijacked country? Or or made your. There was basically that we are the state in a sense. The concept that internet give people power. So it's internet technology is a power on our side. It's very strong and very popular, although it has its own limits. Obviously, from the point of view of NGOs, this technology gives us completely new tools and new levels of, I don't know, mobilization, coordination, access to information, explanation, mapping, expressing your opinion, observing activities of government, etc., etc. Um, it's very hard, it's much more complicated to, to block the information, etc., etc. So obviously, there is a weapon. It is a kind of a powerful weapon or a tool on our side to do things which otherwise will be, if not, uh, will be much more complicated. Put it that way. For the NGOs, especially, it means, if I'm old enough to remember this kind of old ages where basically being an NGO means that you have organization with members, that it needs effort, that your being a member means a kind of obligation, responsibility, maturity, and being consistent. You cannot choose, too many organizations, and you have to somehow commit yourself. Right now you see that to create a kind of a collective power, you almost don't need organization. So on the one hand you might say it's a very light structure. On the other hand, it means that altogether, being a bit provocative, in some cases internet makes organizational institutions even redundant, not needed, obsolete, if you like. Obviously, especially for those organizations who cannot in a sense master the technology as a benefit for organization, it sooner or later make it a kind of not relevant, put it that way. So even for the traditional structure of civil society, internet both is a new tool, but also is a threat for its existence. Because I think more and more, okay, I'm not going to start a lecture on what is a civil society, but definitely civil society are not NGOs. I'm not trying to say that, or other way, being very precise. Having NGOs, it's not necessarily means you have. It's obvious you don't have a civil. It's not automatic. Civil society, it's not the collection of institutions, obviously, and you have a many historical examples of having many institutions actually being completely incapable to stop authoritarianism. The most well-known example is obviously Weimar Republic, more or less 100 years ago, where the number of NGOs, they were using different language, but somehow it's not the automatic recipe. You have civil organization which protect diversity, which invites people to independent thinking, but also you have even more powerful organization which provide people with a too simple question to complicated answer, who are basically trying to make people in a sense to format people, not to help them to cope with it. Basically they how to say, they militarize, if you like. They make it kind of the same. And so the civil society organizations might play a different role in this complicated
Я
game.
перепрошую, якщо можна вже підсумовувати, щоб в нас була певна частина для
Okay.
розмови з
Could
панелістами.
you please summarize,
Okay.
because yet we need some time for further
Yes,
discussion.
that's always my challenge. So to name and to give something for panelists, I just rather kind of going through the bullets. I think in a sense, internet becoming a society, and it's almost kind of a provocative to say maybe it's a kind of a new form of civil society, if you like. I think I'm trying to choose something because I have a long list of things which I think is very complicated, and actually it create a threat for the civil society as is technology.